We are all here. The tone is good. We are continuing on our way to Tone Town, which coincidentally, when I geotag Tone Town, it happens to be in Japan.
Wow.
So who knew that you could get to Japan by road in a car? But we are making our best attempt. I hope everybody is doing well today. The chairmen are here, and we are discussing the topic of our viewer-generated questions. We put out some feelers on Instagram and social media with requests to answer your questions. And we have some great questions in store. Brian is going to be leading us through many of these questions that have been generated by you. And so we're hoping that this is something that you find valuable, especially if you were the one that posed this question. And that maybe the answers in this roundtable fashion will be valuable to everybody that's listening. They can help improve their tone and pedalboard and get them a little bit closer to Tone Town. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to the great Brian Omilion. And let's get into these questions. Let's waste no time to answer people's burning hot questions.
Absolutely. All right. Well, as you can see, I got quite a few. So I'm just going to...
If you're looking on Brian's, or if you're looking on the YouTube, you see Brian's just got a phone full of questions.
First question is going to be the most underrated pedals on the market. Said pedals. I mean, I think we could limit it maybe down to one or two, or maybe two or something.
Okay, two each. Underrated.
Let's just do two each. We'll keep it simple. I'll start off by saying I think honestly for me it's always going to be this one. I feel like an underrated pedal would be for me the Nova Delay. It's still for me the one of the most like underrated. Like a lot of people used it and then other delays came out, but like I still have one and I consistently still throw it on the board because I love it. And the second underrated pedal would probably be I'm a huge fan of the RC Booster, like a really big fan of the RC Booster. I've used it as a drive before. I've used it as a clean boost. I've used it as like a first in the chain shaper. You'll see them on the boards occasionally and how people will use them, but I think it's one of those hidden kind of things that people don't really realize, how many options there are. So that would be my two most underrated pedals.
Good picks, especially the Nova Drive or the Nova Delay.
Yeah,
that's really good.
Yeah.
Have you guys ever heard of this new one I came across? It's I think it's pronounced a Clone Centaur, and very, very highly regarded. Great pedal, underrated though for sure. Some people call it the Klon Centaur, but I think that's a great drive. Good clipping. Big enclosure though, a little bit too big for my personal taste.
They clearly weren't thinking ahead.
No, they were not. I was actually going to say the RC Booster as well. As far I know, it's come up on the show before. Probably top of my list. It would probably have to be RC Booster would be up there, but I'm a really big fan of like speaking of a Klon style pedal, Bondi Effects Sikaz. That's one pedal I like. It's basically a Klon with a much more powerful tone stack EQ section. Has a back sandal EQ in it, so you can boost or cut, which is really good. And it's that pedal. I don't know if you guys have a pedal like this that comes to mind. I always turn it on as an overdrive, intending to turn it back off again. And when I turn it back off, it just doesn't sound as good anymore. I just really like the sound of that pedal when it's on. So that's probably one of my top ones. One I was talking to someone about yesterday. I'm not the world's biggest fan of the Line 6 algorithms. I don't hate them, but there's other stuff out there that I like a little bit more. So as an example, if I could take an Eventide, reverb over a Line 6, it's not really much of a choice for me. However, the thing that I was really surprised about when right over my shoulder on the YouTube, HX Stomp came out, was the amp modeling. For the effects that Line 6 does, I'm like, yeah, they're okay. They're pretty good. I was not expecting to like their amp modeling. I was expecting to actually really dislike it, to be honest. And I thought they did a really good job For a pedal that is a multi-effects unit, I think that part of the HX Stomp is underrated by some. Some people absolutely love it and they're onto it, but I myself kind of started thinking less of it than I should have, and I was proven wrong. Those would be my two.
I like those. How are you, Mason?
There are so many choices out here, so this is certainly not the only option because I'm restricting it to the two that I can think of, that are top of mind. I would say one that a lot of people do not talk about in the overdrive category is the full tone bass drive.
Oh.
This is a bass oriented full drive. And the thing that I like about it is that it addresses some of the low end things that happen with the Tube Screamer. Often, it's completely cut out. And this kind of is like a Tube Screamer with this low end presence so that you have a little bit more of a balanced EQ, but also some of the flavor of a Tube Screamer. That's a really, really cool pedal that not a lot of guitar players used. It kind of has a little bit of a Nobles-ish sound to it because that kind of has maybe a mid-range-ish quality, but maybe more low-end. Really, really good. Not a lot of people used it. Certainly not a lot of guitar players. It's really cool. Another one that is a sleeper, and this is just sort of like a general, overarching sleeper series, which is all of the Hardwire series from Digitech. And primarily the Reverb, the RV7, which has a Lexicon chip, and the Delay, which also has a Lexicon chip and can do like those circular delays that the racks used to do. It's all there. That whole series has some really, really good stuff. So yeah, Digitech Hardwire, but in particular Delay and Reverb, and the full tone bass drive, which is
for guitar. Not necessarily just for bass. Yeah.
You could use it, of course, on bass, and it would sound great. But, it's a really great Tube Screamer.
Nice.
It has that low end, that gets brought back into the circuit.
Are either of these currently on one of your boards, or is it just ones that from, over the past?
The RV7, well, a version of the RV7 is on one of my boards. Pardon me. I have the Digitech Polara, which is the same algorithm, just in a smaller enclosure, sort of the next generation after the Hardwire series. So same algorithms, just a smaller, differently painted enclosure.
Nice. Very cool.
Okay. Well, I have another one. It's kind of a question.
Okay.
A question,
kind of
statement.
Question. It says, are you guys willing to make an Olive Garden themed pedal? The breadstick might be a good name. I just had to throw that one out. It
wouldn't be for free, though. You would not get this pedal for free.
No, not unlimited.
Like the breadsticks at Olive Garden.
Well, we just need to get that Olive Garden sponsorship first.
Yeah, really do.
So if anybody knows Mr. Garden,
or Mr. Olive,
or it could be Mrs. Garden, I don't know. I suppose it could be either. So if you know the Garden family, you're welcome to introduce us, and we can talk numbers. Whatever it is, I feel there needs to be a lifetime, lifetime of free meals. Actually, I think I've been to an Olive Garden once or twice in my life. I don't think there's one within 50 miles of where I live. So they may get the better end of that deal.
Right.
But, would the pedal have to be sold in a baker's dozen?
13th free.
Yes,
they have Olive Garden in Canada.
They do, actually, not too far away from me. I'm kind of the same as you, though. Even though there is one close, I'm not rushing over there to go and eat every week.
Unfortunately, we have them on like literally almost every other corner.
It's like Starbucks in Texas.
It really is. It's
those
like,
breadsticks, man. They get you in the door.
I'm like, I try to convince my kids. I'm like, you want to go Olive Garden? Like, I don't like them. They got breadsticks. Like, okay.
Yeah, they've got carbs.
What do you think of the Voodoo Lab Dingbat? That is another question.
That's it's like a pedal board that has like a true bypass switcher built into it. Is that the one?
Yeah. So it's there's no programmable. I don't know if it's. Let me see if I can look it up.
I don't think
I'll make
I've
sure
ever
the screen share is
done
engaged here, Brian, so you can show us the Dingbat.
I don't think I've ever
First
done
of all,
a
very
setup
brave with the name.
Very brave.
The Dingbat.
That's I would have loved to have been in that marketing meeting or that planning session for the product. What do we call this new pedal board? True bypass strip. True bypass strip. And I'm curious what the leap was from pedalboard with switcher to Dingbat.
I can see Josh Fiden from Voodoo Lab in there with a glass of Merlot, just with names on a dartboard. Dingbat.
Blindfold on, throw it at the dartboard. Okay, I guess it's Dingbat.
So the Dingbat is coming up to me as it's just a pedal board.
Well, no they have different names.
Oh yeah. So they have one. They have a. Here, I'll show it right now. Let me share screen.
They're just up there in Santa Rosa, California.
Yeah. So this is
throwing darts.
If you're watching online, if you're
Angle
listening,
board.
Okay. I see.
Yeah. Envision.
The Dingbat is just the board, though.
Yeah.
It's not like you have to get the enhanced one if you want you have to get the one with the PX.
Correct.
Okay,
yeah. So there's different versions. If I click,
but if you just go to Dingbat, the Dingbat is just the board.
Just the bat. Yeah. Just the bat. Just the board. Just the bat.
Are those D sockets? Can you do kind of panels on the front? Is that why the holes are there? The audience facing side?
I think those are for the power supply, probably.
I think those are for probably likely so they can fit their courtesy jack, or if they have a Voodoo Lab, it can, not a Voodoo Lab. The Mondo has a longer, AC out would be over here.
I like that idea. I think there have been pedal boards in the past that don't take into account the courtesy outlets or the IEC in or any of that. So that's cool. Correct. My biggest thing with pedal boards like this is will it, and it looks like this does, but will it fit a finished pancake plug and or a finished right angle MIDI? Because there have been boards in the past that have not thought that far ahead. And you have to, if you want to run cables underneath, you have to make half of the cable, thread it through the holes, and then solder the other side of the cable. I'm just like, of all the things to not consider, will a common cable fit through this hole size that we have in the board? So it looks like this doesn't have that problem, which is great.
Yeah, I mean, looking at it, they have the support, piece in the middle, which helps. It looks a lot of the bent aluminum companies with the folds and everything. For me personally, it has quite a bit of these excess holes, the run cabling stuff, which sometimes is a plus, sometimes it's not.
It makes it difficult to mount pedals, though.
It does.
You have to have a really weird orientation where it's not exactly symmetry. There's not symmetrical on the bottom of the pedals where the dual lock
exactly. And you can't see it at this top view, but this view, they have a lot of these little punch holes. I don't know if that's for mounting their power supplies.
Power supplies, yeah.
Has to be. I mean, it would only make sense. There's some recessed or what is it, where it's a pocket hole. Countersunk. Yeah, that's what it is. So, I mean, there's a lot of options. I always tell people when you see this kind of stuff, that's like a lot of people ask about the rock boards, like those kind of things, like stuff that has a lot of holes and surfaces sometimes are not always the easiest to mount stuff on, or because if looking at the Dingbat, you have to really strategically place the anchor squares and stuff, where they're going to go and how they're sometimes you can't do, all the way across the board to do a nice channel because you have multiple of those holes, because a lot of those, whatever they call them, pedals, cable slots, or I've heard hot dog holes. I've heard all sorts of
Clever holes.
Yes, a guy I used to work with, I was like, what are those? Are those like cable slots? He goes, oh no, they're hot dog holes.
Hot dog holes. More like cocktail weenie holes.
That's what I was saying. I was like, well,
I don't know what kind of hot dogs you're eating, but those are a little small.
Those are Super Bowl
baby
hot dogs.
Carrots.
The little
baby
smokies.
Carrots.
Yeah.
Little smokies, yeah. So, I mean, the dingbat, I mean, without having one physically and the tester and everything, like it has the aluminum and everything, the really just comes down to like, is that like, that's the size of it. Is like the holes, the kind of thing.
That stuff doesn't bother me, I don't think, as much as it bothers you guys as far as the Velcroing of the pedals and the channels and all that. I think I'd personally prefer more holes like that than less, because the thing that really frustrates me is when you have a flat board like that and you need to get a cable underneath, but there's no holes nearby to do it. And so I think to counteract the downside of there being a ton of holes, I do my whole layout and then I place the Velcro or the dual lock on the board first. So I'm obviously not going to be hitting it over any holes, and then put the pedal down on top of that. Because one of my biggest pet peeves with a Holy board, which I know is another company, with a board with a ton of holes in it, is when you flip it over the underside and you can see the sticky side of the Velcro going over top of a hole. Biggest pet peeve. I can't stand it. Yep. And so, so you have to just kind of counteract that a little bit. But I do like I'd rather have a few extra holes than a few too few coming up short a little bit. So, I mean, to each his own. But I don't think I've ever done a setup on a dingbat before either. It's not a board I've come across too often. But guys, speaking of great pieces of gear that is well thought through, can I tell you about, this is a good transition, right? Good segue. A few of our sponsors. The first one up I want to tell you guys about is the Guitar Sanctuary. We love this sponsor so much that Brian has just set up shop there, and he is doing
there every week.
Every single week. I don't know if it was, a chicken or the egg scenario. Was Brian at the Guitar Sanctuary first, or did they become a sponsor? And then we're like, this is working, guys. We're going to move in. I don't know what happened, the order of events, but here we are. The Guitar Sanctuary, unbelievable spot to get all the gear you need for your rig, whether it's a pedal, a guitar. Do you guys carry the dingbat in the shop? Is that something that is a thing over there? I know you carry a bunch of great pedal boards, but
no, we don't. I don't think we carry Voodoo Lab power supplies, but
there you go.
Boards we do not.
So a whole bunch of great gear, Vertex, Goodwood audio, and then once you have all that stuff purchased, Brian Omilion himself can set up your board for you on any board but the dingbat. And that is, it's a good thing. So check out the Guitar Sanctuary for any of the gear you need for your rig, and you will be happy that you did. The other sponsor I want to tell you guys about is monocreators.com. So Mono does their own version of an angled board, super lightweight, super strong, great for mounting huge pedals underneath because it has a ton of space underneath, whether it's a junction box, power supply, whatever it might be. I'm a big fan of their pedal boards and their soft bags for their pedal boards. I think I told you guys a little while ago, I was forced by the airline to fly my large pedal board in a mono soft bag underneath the, in the luggage area of the plane. International flight from Australia back to Vancouver, showed up perfectly fine, zero damage. So very strong. Brian has their whole line of backpacks pretty much for all of his needs, and Mason has chatted at length in the past about the double guitar bag, whole bunch of different accessories, bags. Mason has his hand up, please.
No, I was pointing that if you look behind me, there's a mono bag back
I thought you wanted to just sing the praises of the dual guitar bag or the gig bag, which I'll do it for you. So a ton of great gear from Mono as well. And to top it off, if you use the code Chairmen, you can get 10% off your order at monocreators.com. So check it out for a whole bunch of great gig bag, pedal board, backpacks, whatever you need. If you need to transport it, Mono is the place to go. Lastly, BTPA or Bestronix. This is a place, if you're building your pedal board and you need accessories, plugs, cable, something that's hard to find for your rig build, BTPA will have it. They are small enough to give you personal service. Just ask for Brad, and large enough to have everything you need for your pedal board. So check out btpa.com or Bestronix. And again, if you use the code DACHAIRS, DACHAIRS, you will get 10% off your order at btpa.com. That's it, guys. Those are the sponsors. Let's get back into it. I honestly don't even remember where we left off. I got so excited to talk about these guys. So I'll pass it back to you, Brian.
Yeah. Well, let's we've just finished up talking about the dingbat. Yeah, the dingbat. I'll pick another one, and then we'll get one from you guys.
Right.
Simplest wet dry wet setup possible, as minimal as you can get. What are you guys' thoughts?
I would say basic things you need to consider is a way to send signal to your dry amp. So that's like, if we're talking the simplest thing possible, you need a way to split your signal to get signal to your dry amp, and then also carry on to your wet effects. And other than that, I mean, that's kind of the key ingredient for a wet, dry, wet rig. My biggest thing, I don't know about you, Mason or Brian, my biggest thing when people talk about a wet, dry, wet rig is I need a way to mute my dry amp, because it really kills me when I need to have more of maybe an ambient sound or something that's a lot more saturated in the wet effects. But if you can't mute that dry amp, then you're always going to have that that dry signal without any wet effects on it always coming through. So I've had maybe one or two customers over the years that didn't want to dry mute, but after I explained that, they're like, oh, yep, that makes a lot of sense. And it's something that people don't think through when they're thinking wet dry. And the only other thing I would say, and correct my definition, guys, if you want to, a wet dry rig, for those that are like, hear about it all the time, not really sure what it is, you're basically splitting your pedal board signal chain into two sections, and there's a bunch of different ways you can do that. But basically one amplifier or output is dedicated for your dry sound, or the kind of the pick attack and potentially overdrives and gain. Another amp is separated for just your dry feeding into your wet and then into that last amp. So it gets some of the wet effects as well. Whole bunch of pros and cons to it, which we've gone over in other episodes. But yeah, you're splitting up your rig a little bit differently than stereo. Yeah, I don't know. What do you think, Mason?
The most basic, I think, would be a line out box. First thing you need. There's a couple of companies that make one. I think the best of them is the Sur one, because it's got isolation on it. And then you're going to need an effect that can mix in parallel, ideally, two effects. So one that I think is the easiest way for people to get into it, that the effect does it all in one, under one roof, is the Source Audio Collider. It has delay and reverb. They're both really nice delays and reverbs. You can run them in parallel. You can run them 100% wet. You can run them in kill dry. It has all those options. It has an analog dry path. And then running it into some sort of cabinet and power amp simulation after that. So that could be a Cab Zeus, that could be a Two Notes Cab M. All those would work for that. So you would need at least those three pieces. The line out box that would be connected to the dry amplifier that connects the speaker jack between the head and the cabinet, or if it's a combo between the speaker out and the, or the speaker itself and the speaker jack on the back of the amp, and then feeds something like the Collider. You have the delay and reverb in parallel. You can mix them however you want, or put some dry in it and then feed it into some sort of cabinet simulation that's going to basically take the place of the power amp of the wet amp. And that can just be another channel in the mixer, or you could feed it into the return of another amp, like a Hot Rod DeVille or something like that has an effects loop. You just go into the return for the wet, and that would negate the Cab Zeus or the Cab M. But those would be probably fewest moving parts.
You wouldn't be able to with the line out box, so you can't mute the dry amp, because you're coming after the power section. And if you mute
the dry is always going. Dry
Yeah.
is always going, and then you're electing to how much dry you want in the wet amps, by way of how much mix you're using on the wet effects. That's like the traditional, studio style wet, dry, wet that you would have seen, in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
The rack style.
The racks. All right. I'm going to share my screen again. If you're listening, feel free to envision this. But there's two different products that I've used in the past for this kind of stuff. The RJM Tone Saver, which they don't currently make. But you can find them some to this office when sold.
But they're in Bulgaria. You can buy one in Bulgaria apparently.
There you go.
There's one I saw on another site. I saw it for sale. Oh, look at that. See those guys up there. But I've used the Tone Saver in the past, just because you're able to run the output and the isolator out, one to go to the front of the amp, one to hit the rest of your wet effects, and then out a stereo of your wet effects. And the other one I've recently been seeing is the Gigrig Humdinger. It's the same concept. There is a lift for that second output. I've seen both of these get put on boards. If it's in a circumstance that you are running into 3 live amps, you don't have to worry about a cab emulator or anything. But if you are, there's different things that you can utilize. I've in the past have done a simple wet dry wet by using the Iridium, running into the Iridium and running the left. I think I had the input sum to mono or a dual mono. I can't remember how I had it set, but then the left going out to a direct box, and that was a dry, and then the right was returning into the wet effects and going out, converting into stereo, hitting a stereo direct box. So that, I think we talked about that. It was one of our first couple episodes that we talked about doing some kind of wet, dry, wet setup. And that for me was the simplest, is because the Iridium was placed after my dry effects, but before my wet effects. And the concept for me a lot of times in the beginning was but then I have to have some kind of cap thing at the very end of the stereo chain, because the Iridium is so far in the beginning, which I have learned that is not the case. So those are probably my two favorite line isolated products right there, as well as a simple way to do the Iridium.
Another way you can do it, and I think this is where I'm definitely much less of a traditionalist. I have to be able to mute my dry amp. The line out box, I know Mason, you use that a lot. Obviously gives you a really strong, healthy signal to work with, which is awesome. But I just have to be able to mute the dry amp. So even I know we do an isolator box, which is kind of like a humdinger or tone saver, but you get the phase flip and the ground lift, but then you can remotely mute the dry out as well. So if you have an RJM, you just use a function switch and you set a preset to mute the dry amp, and you're kind of sorted and good to go. But I do see the pros of the line out box. So if you can't mute, or you don't need to mute, your dry amp, that would be such a great way to go about it. I think I would, if I had to go for simplicity, if that was my biggest thing, I would probably replace the collider with something like an HX Stomp, even though the algorithms are not my favorite. Because if it's simple, then you have amp and cab sim, you can still go parallel, you still have MIDI if you need it, even though it's getting more complex. But there's a whole lot built into that. You could do all your modulation, then split to parallel. You could do your amp and cab sim, then go out even balanced.
Does it have
an
analog dry path though on the Line 6 stuff?
That's a good question. I'm not sure.
Because then it'll turn into a latency issue. That's the challenge on some of those when you're using it like this. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd have to check on that. That's a good question.
I
have a feeling it doesn't, but I could be wrong.
All right. I'm going to share. I didn't realize you guys had this isolator box. So if you're watching there, you can see it right here. There's a great video.
And it's literally it's the same as a humdinger or a tone saver. It's a buffered split with a transformer and a mute. With some
I do
isolation.
like that though. That is very cool though, for the price especially too, and the size of it, because it is the same size as the output or the Audition, which are, I don't even know what that enclosure size is. It's just
1590B.
Yeah,
or 1590B.
Yeah, it's awesome. I love it. I like how simple it is. Another great product. How about we pick one of your guys's questions if someone has one handy, and I'll there's a couple of these that are like, what chairs do you guys have? I don't know what kind of chair. It's a computer chair. Yeah, it's a computer chair. Like that's what my chair is. So
I think Amazon supplied my office chair. And the chair I'm sitting in now is a booth off Facebook Marketplace that I got for free and retrofitted. Yes. Yeah.
I like it.
This is real pleather, guys.
I like it. I like their color.
Mason, do you have a question?
Okay, I'll do one of the ones that I have. So one of the questions is favorite 2-in-1 overdrive pedals.
Okay. I'm going to be honest, guys. I don't really use 2-in-1. I'm trying to think of the last one I've had on my board. I don't know if I had the King of Tone on my board for a while. But I might save that for my next question of I just never connected with it.
Same.
And the Protein is great, but that's kind of a simple answer. Double Barrel does a good job, although I've never had one on my board and had it stay on. I don't know. Brian, do you have any doubles that you really enjoy?
I have two. They're both on. I have two smaller boards at home. I don't know why I have smaller boards at home. I only ever use one board. I think it's just for fun because if I have pedals just sitting on a shelf, I feel like I have to either use them or sell them. So throwing them on a board just makes it seem like I use them.
There you go. You just build more boards.
But I do use the Protein on one smaller board that I have, and I really do love it. I think it's a great pedal. The other one is actually a newer product that a friend of mine's company has come out with. It's like an overdrive and boost pedal in one by Westerlund Audio. It's a 2-rock style with a boost. Called the one I've posted some videos and shared it.
Two rock style overdrive.
It's not 2-rock style. It's a Dumble style, like Dumble voiced overdrive with a boost on it.
Okay.
Which is very different from what I'm used to using because I usually use like a Jackson Prism and a Mulholland Drive. Like those are like my main overdrive type sounds that I have on literally right there. I'm fixing my board for Easter. Those are probably the only other 2-in-1 type drive pedals I use. I've had the Double Barrel. I've had the State Line, I think it was called, the JHS State Line. They had one. They had a couple other ones. I've never meshed with 2-in-1s because of the size of the pedal. I typically like to go for a smaller form like the RC Booster or Prism or Mulholland Drive size. So yeah, I would say those are my two.
Have you guys played is it Gladio Cornerstone? That one comes up a bit, and the Jet Pedals Lamb Drive. Those two come up on setups, but I played them each like maybe for 5 minutes, but I haven't gotten tons of time with them. But those are consistent on boards that we have done. I don't know if you guys have any more experience than I do, but those have gotten good reviews from customers that I've worked with.
Yeah. Yeah, I did a board for them for NAMM last year, and for Cornerstone.
Yep.
And they had the big Gladio and their smaller one. And it's a great pedal. I think for me, like the type of gain I'm getting out of it wasn't for me. But it is a very common pedal I see as well come across on boards. If it's not the big one, it's a small one because the big one can also do the TRS jacks. So you can split the sides if you're running a switcher. I've never worked with the Jet pedal stuff. That's like the one that I actually had someone ask me a question about one of their reverb pedals, and I've just never used it. So I've never I can't really give a honest opinion without ever like watching a video only can do so much. It's until you play it. So,
what about you, Mason?
I'm trying to think of like any dual pedal that I've ever used. The only one that comes to mind that I've used is our Steel String Supreme, but it's not really a 2-in-1. It's like it's really the same pedal. It's just like it brings in more features to enrich the original channel. So I don't really think of it as like a 2-in-1. I mean, you could use the channels independently, but it wouldn't. I don't think it's not really like two separate overdrives, and it's not really. I mean, maybe it's a really light overdrive, but it's not like a heavy overdrive. I mean, I would just say ones that I see a lot. The Gladio one, I see the Duelist a lot.
True. Good call.
Duelist. Great one.
The Protein. I would say generally, this is just a separate aside in the pedal world. Most people on the manufacturing side view double pedals as really hard to sell, especially if they represent existing products that are in their lineup, because often what it does is cannibalizes those individual products, and people are like, well, why would I buy, for example, like, a Vertex Boost and a steel string for $400, at $200 each, and I can buy the combo version for $100 or $250. So I get it for $150 less if I just buy 2-in-1. So sometimes it can be a difficult sell, and companies end up not finding them to be that beneficial. I mean, certainly there's been a few that have come through and been really great, and people really love them. But it can also be really, really difficult to make it marketable long term without sort of undermining other stuff in your product line. So just a reason why maybe we don't see tons and tons of them. But with that in mind, I would like to stop to talk to you about some of the sponsors that make this episode possible. Firstly, our friends over at Sweetwater and their Sweetwater Gear Exchange. It is a great, great service for us all that love to buy and sell our gear. Now, I've been a long-time user of Craigslist. I had been a long-time user of Reverb, but I found myself sick and tired of having to pay the fees associated with Reverb, and I've been tired of the flakes on Craigslist. And so what we have and what we're left with is the Sweetwater Gear Exchange, which basically combines all the great things I love about those platforms without the things I dislike about those platforms. And the really cool thing that Sweetwater allows you to do is that they allow you to keep 100% of your earnings as a seller, so long as you decide to take those earnings and put them onto a Sweetwater gift card. If you're somebody that's buying stuff like me all the time at Sweetwater, it's a great way to go to ensure that you keep every single dollar that you earn on your used gear. So Sweetwater Gear Exchange, you can head over to sweetwater.com/used. You can set up an account for free, get buying, get selling. I've had nothing but great experiences. Highly recommend that you check it out. Secondly, I would like to talk to you about our friends over at Stringjoy. Stringjoy has some really, really great strings. And as somebody who has been a string destroyer my whole life, I've always struggled to find strings, firstly, that were not coated, that could last me more than one session of playing. And they certainly have that. They are incredibly well built, handmade in Nashville, Tennessee. And I'm really excited to even try their coated strings, which I haven't tried yet, to see how those last comparatively, because I don't really like to use coated strings. I just have to use them because I destroy strings so quickly. But their regular strings seem to last me at least 2 or 3 times longer than normal strings, and I can't wait to see how the coated strings last. And I'm just really impressed with everything that they do, and they offer our listeners 10% off by using the codes BOARDS, BOARDS, 10% off anything at Stringjoy. They also have subscription services so you can get strings delivered to your house every month if you're interested in that. So go check out stringjoy.com. And do I have one more sponsor today?
That's it.
Nope.
That's it.
Just
That's
for
it.
you too. For you.
That's it. We're gonna save the rest for Grant. So that was 2-in-1 overdrives. Is that right?
Correct.
Yep.
2-in-1 overdrives. I think that we've spoken our piece on there. Unless you have some more that you want to add.
No, you actually you said Duelist too. That was another one I meant to say. I see that one a lot. And I also see that the Tim, like the newer version of the Tim.
I
see that. Yeah, I don't see it as often. I do see it. I had one client who I did like this massive blackout board, and he had all these like black overdrives and all the black strands, but then he had the blue Tim. So I think he ended up swapping it out for like
that thing and spray paint it. Yeah,
something. Yeah, and that was everyone's comment too. Like the controller was black, everything on the unit was black except the Tim. But that's another one I see.
I bet that customer is just a pot stirrer. Hey, he just likes to, just for all those OCD client or OCD people out there, you see this all blackout board and one pedal, and that's blue. just.
I had multiple requests to Photoshop it, and I was like, no, I'm okay. I can Photoshop, but not that. Hey, I Photoshopped the KTR the look teal for April Fools this past week, so 900 people asked if they could buy it from me, which was fun. Question on wireless systems such as Boss, the WL50, WL60, or other good units. I mean, I don't get a lot of wireless units like requests. If I do, I'll occasionally get those. Like I think it's the the big bulky.
The one that's
the GLX.
The one that looks like a tuner.
Yes. Yeah. It can also be a tuner. I have a couple of them that I put on boards before. I mean, I've installed rack wireless units, the Sennheiser stuff. And your guys' building, do you have a certain, one that you recommend or most, the one that you mostly see?
I think the best wireless unit is just a longer cable. I try and avoid wireless, to be honest. I think if you're trying to build a rig, and I'm not saying that I'm anti-wireless. This is a safe place for all types of signal transmission. But if you can use a cable, then a cable is the way to go. I mean, if you're talking about the most rugged rig you can come across, it's not going to have a wireless unit in it, although there are great products out there. I just think there's battery failure. There's interference you have to consider. There's different venues that some will interfere, others will not. There's all sorts of stuff that you can come across with a wireless unit. So if you don't need it, I would avoid it. And the other thing as well, if you're into buffer sensitive pedals like a fuzz or treble boost or whatever it might be, a wireless is going to make your life very difficult because you're now buffering your signal right at the guitar itself. And so,
what's Brian going to do when he wants to walk down the ego ramp at church and
and interact with the crowd,
touch his fans out
crowd
there?
surf.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah. I mean, again, I'm sorry, Brian. You're just gonna have to stay still on stage if you want that solid rig. But
no crowd surfing
if you
on
must.
Easter.
If you must, yeah.
See, when I was in a band, I think I had like the G30, like Line 6 one or something like that, really simple. But that's because I was like doing like guitar spins and running around because I was in a hardcore band.
I thought it's because you guys had like synchronized dance moves where you would.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, we took it like the Trans-Siberian Orchestra where they have like the rising platforms. No, I have a wireless. It's one of the GLX, but it's like the really big receiver. I have my backpack. Let me see if I can find it. But it basically, like the body pack, and what I only ever use a wireless like if like our sound guy, because we're part of a church plant, and like doesn't show up, and I have to like mix like during the set, which is very difficult to do both at the same time.
In transitions, you just run back to the desk quickly to do some mixes.
I would during sound checks and stuff. I will like adjust everything, but then nothing sounds great because like I'm not playing or anything. So I've like had to like purchase a wireless and whatnot to use. But yeah, the problem with wireless is like some stuff like I did one a frac on a FM9 board is that sometimes you just get dropout depending on the venue in. You have to worry. There's so many extra things you have to worry about. Let alone have to worry about my in-ear monitor pack having batteries in it. But like, if you're wireless, like you can play if your monitors go down, you can just listen to the drums or something. But like, if you're wireless guitar, then you have to undo it and you have to do like. There's just so many like. For a 30-minute set, I'm just gonna use my instrument cable.
I mean, some sets
as the good Lord
kind of
intended.
Rely on them. But
you think Jesus used a wireless? Come on.
There's another episode. What guitar did Jesus use? Yeah.
Just a shabby old Tweed Deluxe.
I'm gonna say it wasn't an SG, but I would say
handmade.
Even
more he rounded those those cutouts.
Yeah. And then the Les Paul was born. I think there is obviously a place for wireless, but I think if you can avoid it, I would. And for those of you, Brian, funny story for you. I used to do guitar spins as well. I know you wouldn't think it by looking at me.
Yes.
The least hardcore guy around, sitting right in front of you. But I was using a wireless. Did the guitar spin. It was a PRS Brazilian 22. Like, beautiful guitar. Don't spin that guitar. But of course I was young and dumb. My strap popped off. It was in a venue where we were like semi in the round. And so there were people, right to the side of the stage, and spun my guitar. Strap pops, flying through the air. It doesn't go straight into the ground. It goes for a trip. And I turn around to my side and I see this stunned girl. She must have been like 14 years old. And it just landed right in her arms. And she was sitting down, and just the most stunned look on her. Ran over, grabbed my guitar. Thank you so much. Very sorry. Kept playing. And then after that, the spins kind of had to stop or get strap locks. But the wireless was an issue. If I had a cable, my guitar never would have landed in her arms. It would have just kind of stayed where it was. So I think the cable was another win for the cable side of things on that.
So question on this: you said your PRS had a Brazilian?
Yes. There you go. It was a very clean clean cut.
Yeah. A lot of polyurethane on that one.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
I have a question that actually someone asked on our feed for the question round for this thing. If you guys don't mind. This one comes up with setup customers all the time. So I thought this was a really good question. The preference, if you guys have one, between nanopog and micropog. Micropog being the one that is in a slightly bigger enclosure, still 3 knobs.
One's in the BB and one's in the
B.
1590B.
Yeah.
Okay.
So is there a difference? What is your preference? Any thoughts?
Apparently there is a difference. I've never shot them out side by side, but I know a lot of people that used the one that was in the larger enclosure,
the micro
one, and then they got the nano and they said, well, it just is not the same pedal.
Agreed.
I would think that Electro-Harmonix would be able to match it 1-to-1 circuit wise, but at least anecdotally reported by users, people say it doesn't sound the same.
I've had the same experience, although I agree. I haven't done a scientific or repeatable test. I had a micro on my board, then needed to downsize because of space. Got to fit more stuff. And it just never felt the same. I really disliked the nano, to be honest. The micropog was like home base for me as far as pitch effects go. And so I noticed a very quick difference. I still need to do an A/B test though. The size of the nano is very convenient. Obviously, it's almost half the size, but it just didn't sound or feel the same. So that's where I'm coming from for those ones.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I'm also like when with running a switcher, if there's a pedal that you have to click it on every single time, I'm gonna find something else just because sometimes I just forget or I'm in the moment or I'm setting up other stuff. And the nano has that soft switch, which is cool. But anytime the board boots up, it doesn't automatically turn on or anything. There's not even a setting to do that. So the micro for me has always been a favorite. That's such a small little thing. But for me, it's the same thing for sound. I think they do sound differently, which is really, really odd. The fact that, when they were designing it, I don't know, maybe they wanted it to be voiced a little bit differently, which is interesting. But through setups, even if it's space related, they're like, no, I'll make room for the micro.
It's a good call.
They'll make room for it, even though it is, larger. Which is funny because I did have literally the exact same question I was gonna ask. Perfect.
Sorry, man. Stole it from you.
No, you're good. One question is, I'm looking to get a new guitar. Should I get a 335 or a dual jet?
Whew. I have an opinion on this. But I think it's ripe for disagreements. I would say obviously they'll sound different. There's different pickups, all that. That goes without saying. I think the first thing that comes to mind is how you're going to be using it. Are you touring with it? In my mind, and again, this is where please disagree with me. Gretsch guitars, I love Gretsch guitars, but I think they are not built for the road. I think they are a finicky guitar that needs to be constantly adjusted and tweaked. And so in that mind, like if you're touring, 335 without question, because it's a much more stable guitar. If you need that Gretsch sound and you're not touring or you have a tech coming with you, then I would probably go Gretsch. And because I don't personally bond with a 335. I love the sound of a duo jet, but yeah, I think for touring, it's without question a Gibson, the 335.
What about you, Mason? I mean, looking.
He's going to pull out a 335, aren't you? There you go. There's your answer.
I love that one.
What a beautiful color. For those on YouTube, Mason just pulled out a gorgeous 335 in it's not cherry. What is it?
I don't know what they call that color.
The beautiful red.
I mean, it's faded. I mean, it's a real one. It's from '68, so it's had some time to patina.
That's beautiful. So you're obviously you're a Gibson man.
Well, I think the 335 is just a classic. A very classic instrument used on a lot of hit records. Excuse me. The Gretsches have a very specific and unique sound. It's one of those things where somebody's asking, sort of a question where we're to make a recommendation with maybe totally dissimilar context. It's like me saying, well, I wear a size 12 shoe, so you should wear a size 12 shoe too, because it works so great for me.
Yeah,
it's sort of like a recommendation that is, like it's kind of hollow because I don't really know anything about this person's playing. I don't know anything about their guitar technique, what they gravitate towards. I can just say that if I'm in that situation, I'm choosing the Gibson.
Yeah. So as someone that owns 3 Gretsches, including
there we go,
one of them that I have set up.
Send that my way, please.
So like the bridge is like this one.
And if you're watching on YouTube, Brian is holding a Hannah Montana Daisy Rock guitar
in shell pink, very gorgeous. I think that's vintage hardware. He upgraded it to.
Exactly, best of both worlds.
What Gretsch is that?
And this is the Nashville double cut. We actually got it in trade, and I have a standing thing here that if we get a Gretchen, it automatically comes back to me to see if I like it, and if I do, then I immediately take it. And I will say with Gretches, and I've went through Les Pauls, 335s. I went through so many different things, and I
went through
agree
a lot
with
of
you guys.
phases.
Lots of phases.
Like
I've had
torn
Strats.
Levi's.
Yes. Slim,
leather pants.
straight.
You went through a lot of phases.
Flat iron hair.
Lot. I had long hair. I did have long hair. I don't ever know why I did that. For me personally. But I will say, like, I would pick a 335 because I have noticed that there is less maintenance, like adjustability that you have to do if you're on the road. Like the Gretsch, yes, I have to kind of get them set up every once in a while. But a big problem too is it depends on, what style of music you're playing, how hard you play it. If you're going in and out of weather, like different weather temps, like here in Texas, the weather just can't make up its freaking mind. Like it's always cold or it's always hot. It's always changing. So it kind of depends on how you're storing your guitars if you're hanging. There's so many different things, but like a big thing for me is pin bridges and those kind of things to kind of help. But before we move on to our final questions, I did want to mention 2 more of our amazing sponsors, and that would be Creation Music Company. as I have said and will continue to say, it is not a normal work day if I don't at least get 2 or 3 creation boxes in. I literally got back from vacation to find multiple creation boxes and one being delivered at the exact moment. So I would say check them out. They have amazing pedalboards, platforms, risers, cases, bulk supplies for cabling if you want to make your own, or if you want to order pre-made stuff, they have it. Using the code Chairmen 15 CHAIRMEN 15 for 15% off. It does exclude a lot of their custom cases or their bulk connectors because they are already at discount. But check them out. Go on creationmusiccompany.com. Another one is a new sponsor, which I'm very excited about.
Hello.
Very, very excited. Hey, it's my new sponsor, horn.
Yeah.
It's Neural DSP.
Yes, sir.
If you are familiar with Neural, they have great plugins. They have the Quad Cortex. I'm excited to dive more into their stuff because they're great and they sound great. I had a FaceTime with a client who was setting up his quad and he just needed some options, and I gave him some options, and it was so easy to program it. But they do have a discount code for 30% off. The code is Chairmen, CHAIRMEN, for 30% off. It does not cover the Quad Cortex, but it does apply to all their plugins, but nothing that's brand new. I think there's like a waiting
90
period.
days.
Yeah,
First 90 days.
First 90 days.
So like the brand new Mark II C Plus, which I can't wait to dive into. That is not, you have to wait it's been out maybe a month. So maybe another 60 days you'll be able to use that discount code on. But Corey Wong, Pliny, all the other ones that they have, Tosin Abasi. I have the Corey Wong one. Super good.
Yeah.
Just gotta say that. But I want you to tell us about the Seal rig that you built that had the Quad Cortex. That's super cool.
So I did one for Seal, which he was actually the one I FaceTimed with. I was on vacation and I FaceTimed him just setting up, just like getting his quad set up to do different signal chains for him to switch between acoustic and electric. It was really simple. It was a Quad Cortex with Creation Music Company cabling, plugs and Mogami cabling on a Creation Elevation Series board. So like we're hitting all the sponsors on this board, in a Creation case. I think I proposed to him a mono, carrying case, but he wanted a Rode case. But yeah, that, Neural is coming out with some really great stuff. The technology is really crazy and it's so small. I think Mason, you just got one, and you'll be diving into it. So it's maybe a future episode we'll dive more into the Quad Cortex. But yeah, those are all of our sponsors for today. I want to finish up with some final thoughts on. I had one person. This is an interesting one.
Finish us off with some good questions.
This is an interesting one, and I'm curious about it because I had mentioned it earlier about. Why do people endorse bad or mediocre gear?
Man, we need another hour.
What would be an example of that, Brian?
That's what I'm wondering. I mean,
we're pretty positive guys, but let's just name and shame.
Which I think is funny because we also endorse stuff that we think. I think it comes down to like the taste. It's, if someone is saying, "Oh my gosh, this is the best pedal ever," and it's $29 pedal, you should be like looking into the history of it and the quality of it and like the whys and stuff. If you're seeing someone that's like, I use this every single day and it's like paid promotional kind of thing, maybe do some research. If you get people asking, I think a big part of it is just it's all such a personal opinion thing. And I think sometimes people are just so hard set on why they think, like me, I love Gretches. I'm very set on I like Gretches. And that's my opinion. I have other people, I have a coworker who hates them. But that's just my opinion. So I wouldn't say that there's never like mediocre gear. I think there's mediocre taste. I think on kind of things like people, just to be honest about it, I think there's some people that just have different tastes on different things. Like my wife loves coffee. I hate coffee. That's her preference about it.
So you're saying she has mediocre taste because she likes coffee, Brian?
I just think she has a different. I think she has a different taste. She has a stronger taste of that horrible tasting liquid. In
this case, though, she is correct, and you are unfortunately very wrong, Brian.
You have mediocre taste.
I am the mediocre taste because I do not like the bitterness of that coffee. So I think it's such a. I don't think they're trying to endorse mediocre stuff. I just think it comes down to their taste in gear. What do you guys think?
Oh, is that a delegation?
That's feel free to take it away. I feel like I've been talking first a lot in this episode.
Okay,
I want to hand it over to you, Mason. Right. You go first.
So I don't think that it always necessarily has to do with taste. Sometimes it can have to do with the financial side of being an artist, and in the way that an artist makes money is not just from album sales or touring. A lot of them have to have multiple income streams to make ends meet. And so sometimes I would say it's probably less common with like really, super well-known, guitar players, like somebody on like a John Mayer level is probably not going to endorse something that is, kind of mid to low end because it's not stuff that they use typically. But for guitar players that are kind of more, mid-level, you might see some, what you might consider to be an unusual or, questionable endorsement in terms of it doesn't seem to meet with, what you would have expected from them up until that time. And some of that does have to do with money. And a lot of the bigger companies can come to kind of mid-level artists and say, hey, we're going to give you a $50,000 a year retainer to use product X. And that's really easy money. And, maybe they've agreed to have the product customized, a bit to their liking. So maybe it has some differences from what ships to the customers. And I certainly know that to be true because I've worked on a lot of high profile people's pedal boards, and I've seen the signature pedal that they use and the ones that go out to customers, and they can often be very different. And so there's a financial element to this that I think needs to be acknowledged. I don't think it's always that, but it certainly is a component of it. And it could be a taste thing too. They like this thing. They've used it for a long time, and maybe it's not super high end, but they're, just known to use it. And that's just become part of their thing. And so that's what they endorse. I think that it really just is, it's a case-by-case basis. But I think probably, the dirty little secret is, some of endorsements are strictly financial arrangements and not much more than that. And the artist can presumably get their sound out of anything. They're professional guitar players, and they know that, they could make anything work, and they might as well make something work that's going to help support them and their careers and their families. So, I'm not mad at it. Yeah. It happens quite frequently. And that's just kind of part of the business.
And I think as well with that, you have to be, with any recommendation, whether it's a paid promotion or someone that just loves their gear and wants to tell you about it, it really is something you have to take with a grain of salt. Even on this episode, this is what we do. We talk about gear and our recommendations, what we love and sometimes what we don't. But even our recommendations, I would take with a grain of salt, and there's no one perfect, one size fits all overdrive, guitar, cable, pedalboard. I like their reasoning behind their recommendation. I like why they said they like this pedalboard or the whole placement on the dingbat. Like that actually sounds like a similar reasoning that I would take. I think I'm going to give that product a try. Whereas a lot of these recommendations, you'll get the newest, latest overdrive pedal. You'll hear an awesome video through racks of processing. Like that sounds unbelievable. And the recommendation is, yep, feels good, sounds great, has all these different types of clipping diodes, you're going to love it. And you get it, and it doesn't live up to this huge, expectation and hype that was built up in this video. Well, it's just not realistic. And I think you have to take any recommendation. Let's try and remove the hype and take it for it, take it at its merits, and just know that you might resonate with it. You might really click with that pedal just like the person did on the video, but there's a good chance you won't. And, I think that just is kind of the revolving door of some of the gear in the industry. Is you just can't get along with every exactly, like there's a new piece of gear every week, and you just have to know that you're not going to love every piece of gear, and that's just is what it is. That's kind of the beauty of finding the diamond in the rough of that overdrive. Like I tried 15 overdrives, and this is the one. After that, all the weeks of trying different stuff and different settings, amps, guitars, combinations. It's hard work finding the gear that you really click with. And unfortunately, YouTube videos are not going to do that work for you. They will give you hints and tips and tricks, but you at the end of the day have to find what you really love. So I think it's a hard thing. The digital space is amazing and has opened up so much for us as far as communication and learning, but it just can't do that final ears test. You're playing, your rig, your amp, you just have to do the work yourself, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it. But it's kind of the exciting part about being a musician is finding that sound. That's my very long-winded way of saying
that. If you can't, you should check out the Brian May headphone amp. I noticed that was the recent questionable artist endorsement.
Okay. Interesting.
He's like, you just plug it into your guitar and you're in your own world. And then you have this treble booster.
Stairway to Heaven, right there. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Dang. Well, I would say, that was a pretty good chat about just some questions. There are plenty more. I think maybe we pick this up at a different time. Don't you guys have any kind of final thoughts on today's questions or anything you want to elaborate on? Or
I'd say put any of the questions you'd love to see answered in the comments, and we'll try and get to them. We'll try and get to them there as well. And it's really good for us.
If we didn't answer your question, put it there for sure.
It's good for us to know your questions, so for future episodes we know what people actually want to hear about, rather than we'll talk about what we want to hear about all day long. But it's also helpful if you guys let us know. But that was great. I think some great topics covered. I'm glad we touched on the dingbat. Really happy we touched on that one. Thank you guys for bringing that up. And I think it was a fun episode, guys.
All right.
Awesome.
Well, until next time, we'll hop back in Grant's Miata with the automatic transmission and continue to make our way to Tone Town. Until next week, gentlemen.
Awesome.
See you later.
See you later.
See ya.